Welcome, everybody, to the Synapse Philosophy Group. I'm your host, Dr. Haig, John, Chiropractor. And I'm here with a lot of great chiropractors, the minds of chiropractic philosophy and history, and masters in our profession. I feel blessed to be on the same Zoom screen with you guys, all of you. And we're on D.D. Palmer's 1914 book, The Chiropractor. Page 95, midway through, disease is the first one. Disease is too much or not enough function is right in the middle of the page. The name of this chapter, the normal and abnormal movements of the vertebral column. Alan has something he posted on our page, and everybody, that are on this right now, and the people that listen to it, join our page, Synapse Philosophy Group page on Facebook. We don't have it on Instagram. Maybe we'll get one on Instagram. This is all I can get up so far, but join our Facebook page. And on our YouTube channel, that's where we put these, and on Spotify and all the other things, Apple and all those things. It's Innate Express is the YouTube channel. Soon we're going to have our own YouTube channel, Synapse Philosophy Group, but we're getting there, okay? So with that long-winded introduction, Alan, why don't you read that for us?
Great. So I found a quote recently that says, "The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We've created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift." That's from Albert Einstein. And I see that as talking about the intuitive mind as innate intelligence and the rational mind as educated intelligence, educated brain, and innate brain. And I think our society is exactly what he says. We talk about the fact that, unfortunately, our profession is moving towards the rational brain and medicine instead of staying with the intuitive brain and innate. And that's my comment.
Is it really rational? I think it's irrational, really, of going into the most aggressive thing first, right? In which we see all in our practices. I brought one home that I wanted to read too, and this is D.D. Palmer and Elita, Pasquale Sarasoli's wife and an amazing chiropractor herself. She put these together, and Dr. Brian Corrigan, he gave me some of these, and I'm just going to read it for you. This is from D.D. Palmer's 1914 book, the one we're on. We've all read this. This is page 4. And Dee said, "A man is a dual entity." I love this, the duality of man, composed of intelligence and matter, spirit and material, the immortal and the mortal, the everlasting and the transient. The manifestation of such an existence is intelligent action. Where have we heard that from? Chiropractors especially are aiding in this great advancement by adjusting the osseous structure, the position of which has to do with determining normal and abnormal tension. For in whatever part function is abnormally performed, tonicity is either lacking or excessive. Creative intelligence is prevented from expressing itself normally. Creative intelligence is the part I liked about that one too. So we're on page 95 midway. And I'm wondering if somebody would like to do some reading that would want to take over the reins for a little while today. Anybody?
I'm always happy to read.
Alan, our faithful reader, let's go for that.
Ready to go? All right, so we said page 95, about halfway down. Disease is too much or not enough function. About 95% of all diseases are accompanied by slightly displaced articulations. The vertebra is not displaced. The sliding movement of the articulations are increased beyond the normal, consequently increasing the size of the foramen on one or the foramina on both sides. The balance of ailments are because of displacement of other joints. The displacement displaces the articular surfaces, does not crowd the normal movement. The normal movement is exaggerated. Chiropractors have demonstrated that nerves which innervate certain organs proceed from one or the other side of the spine. A proven fact, the neuroskeleton is a regulator of tension when its articular surfaces have not been forcibly displaced, separated from their normal bearings, but articular processes not in normal contact, partially displaced, are disease producers. A cervical luxation has been known to the medical fraternity for centuries, but a chiropractic luxation was discovered by D.D. Palmer. Chiropractic is unlike any other method or system. Don't you forget it.
I love that.
The ingenuity manifested by chiropractors placing vertebrae in cuts just to suit their fancy is not only amusing, but borders upon the ridiculous.
Pause. Let's pause 1 second. Okay.
Right.
Ingenuity manifested by chiropractors, seeing something that's not there. They're manifesting it. That's pretty interesting. Ingenuity. Why do you think he said this? What do you think that sentence is? Why did he put that in there?
Well, because chiropractors say you got to move the bone, and he's saying you got to that the bone. Many chiropractors say that the bones impinge the nerves, and he's saying it's not that; it's the abnormal motion in the joints that is the problem. You use the bones as your levers to correct the articulation of the function of the articulations.
Yeah.
I forget what technique I studied, but they were into the facet location and and that was the basis of the line of correction. They weren't basing it on like spinous, right, left, superior, the way Grostic and the specifics. It was more about the alignment of the articular facets.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Let's go on.
I'm making an important distinction between the surgical displacement of vertebra and the chiropractic dislocation of the intervertebral articular surfaces. I copy a few terms of chiropractors who refer to the vertebrae as defined in this article and by all anatomists, but few chiropractors realize the difference between the two luxations. In the many cuts of vertebrae I have on hand, their abnormal relative position, always made so by hand, the vertebrae are shown as being displaced out of their normal alignment. Judging from the following quotations, I am not mistaken in the above statement.
Now,
the spinal adjustment, yes?
Well, 1 second. He, through this whole book, or even 1910, I've never read the word in many cuts of vertebra.
Yeah, he used the word cuts a minute ago too, and I was just going to say I'm not clear on what he's discussing there.
We've read a lot of D.D. Palmer in this group, and I have never seen him use that term before. Okay. Right. I don't know if there's some variable to that, or if you guys have any insights, or if it's just not really relevant, which is rare. I mean, that's D.D. Palmer. He used words specifically.
Because they were, yeah, it was because, I mean, how much x-ray were they talking about here? I mean, is that having to do with cuts of a film? They didn't do slices of films back then.
No. Anyway, so that's something to think about. If we get some insights there later, maybe in reading some years to come, I'm going to remember that cuts. I really will. Okay, next one, spinal adjustments. This is where we're getting some meat right now, I think.
All right, spinal adjustment, subluxated spine, vertebra depressed, displaced vertebra. He's referring here to, he said in many cuts, he's talking about terminology that he's quoting here. Vertebral subluxation, displacement of vertebrae become displaced, vertebrae become luxated, adjusting spinal vertebrae, adjustment of a vertebra, vertebrae out of alignment, partially displaced vertebrae, We adjust displaced vertebrae, subluxations in the spine. The vertebrae are wrenched, displaced. Chiropractic is the adjustment of vertebrae. Spinal adjustments replace vertebrae into line. Spine is secluded, normal and abnormal foramina. Vertebral luxations, the cause of disease. Shut off the flow of impulses. Do vertebrae stay in place when adjusted? These displacements may be in many directions. Adjustments restore the vertebrae to their normal position. The vertebrae are liable to subluxations or partial displacements. The vertebrae of the spine are replaced in proper alignment. When the vertebrae become luxated, they pinch nerves and they shut off nerve. And they shut off nerve force. It is positively proven that vertebrae subluxations are the cause of disease. Cut number 3. So,
I think then now we're looking at, he's probably referring to, some pictures.
Yeah, that's
Or
what I was just thinking.
anatomical structures, maybe. He had.
No, I think he's showing pictures in a class.
Yeah, like slides. We'd say slide 1 or something, maybe in some way or another.
Makes
But
sense.
he's got some kind of illustration or something out of a book that he's saying cut 1, cut 2.
Right.
Cut number 3 shows, Cut number 3 shows spines and vertebrae in and out of place. In this cut, the lower vertebrae is racked to one side, subluxated, displaced. Under a cut, showing how vertebrae can be out of line, pinching nerves. A vertebral subluxation is a mechanical interference with the flow of nerve supply. Between the vertebrae is the only places where the nerves pass between movable bone structures. From subluxation comes the pressure which holds back from the organs and tissues the vitalizing currents. In cut 1, the second vertebra has been moved backward, presenting a partial displacement or subluxation. An accident or strain will cause the displacement of or luxation of any of one of these vertebrae. A chiropractor with one dexterous thrust adjusts vertebrae into its natural position, removes the subluxation. In cuts B and D, the superior vertebrae are luxated, displaced. The spinal openings are occluded, nearly closed. A prominent writer says, the clicking resulting from the adjustment can never be shown to be, quote, the bone that had been thrown in place, unquote, as they so strenuously maintain. Quote, the sudden separation of the facets takes place and the, quote, clicking, unquote, sound is produced. Separating the facets of the two bones, that is the articular surface and lets the air in and gives the sound. His alma mater taught, quote, we find great use for atmospheric pressure to hold bones far enough apart to let the joint water pass freely over the opposing ends of the bones, unquote. Many persons have had the articular surfaces of the vertebrae replaced of themselves, accidental chiropractic. These replacements of articular surfaces are accompanied by audible clicks or snaps. The audible click heard when adjusting is the upper articular surface striking against the osseous abutments, the laminae in the vertebra, the shoulders of the laminae in the dorsals, except the 10th, 11th, and 12th, which may vary in having the transverse processes broken up into external, superior, and inferior tubercles. The superior tubercles answering an admirable purpose of an abutment in the preventing of the occlusion of the foramina. The atlas strikes against the odontoid process, thereby causing the audible click. End of the chapter.
Well, he's giving us that time period's spinal biomechanics, right? Would you agree? And
Yes.
what they knew at the time and how best to describe that. And from the research that he's done, would you? That's what I'm kind of seeing there, right? That's what you need to teach your students. So this morning, and it makes me think. This morning, I was asked by the school in Spain to teach a webinar, and they didn't tell me what time. And then they called me at 7 o'clock, 6:50 this morning, actually. So fortunately, I had pants on. They were pajamas. And so we were demonstrating toggle. We were talking about toggle and low force adjusting, Scott, and a lot of cool stuff. So it was demonstrating. We're going to have that video posted soon on our page. Just, I was in my pajamas, everyone. All right. But what we talked about too, because we talked about, I always mention philosophy and the green books. And one thing they said, well, we're an evidence-based school. And I said, hey, that's fantastic. What DD is talking about is the evidence of the day, far superior than very likely, most of the sickness profession at the time. This was the evidence. This is, we're seeing outcome. He's showing the scientific evidence of what the adjustment is, spinal biomechanics, so forth. And like Barry has said so many times, his the spines and his anatomical collections and all those research that he's done was cutting edge of the time by far. And thank you, beautiful. And I have
Hey,
this.
I'm sorry. I was gonna say, when people say to you that they're evidence-based, I have no problem with evidence-based. The problem is that if you are only evidence-based and don't accept that there may be something more that's available, then you're limiting yourself. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that science continually is validating things that Dee said and BJ said and things that they found. We're constantly being validated as science moves forward, and we're able to research things that they talked about, stuff that was intuitive to them and things that they saw, but and now it's becoming evidence-based. But if you're limited to only what you've been able to prove, you can leave a lot out.
I have a
Who
question.
said lack of proof is not the same as proof of lack?
Well, Alan, what you just read from Albert Einstein, right, was exactly what you're talking about right now. I mean, it was that quote. If it's all just logic, that's all you're ever going to see. You have to have the spiritual with the logical, with the material with the spirit, the matter with the intelligence, And you can't put your finger on, you can't weigh intelligence, but you can weigh matter. But it takes that intelligence, that spirit to give a substance to this matter, right?
Yep.
So thank you. Love you
Good
too.
question.
Yeah.
So the needle scratches my record when I hear people say, well, back in the day, based on the knowledge they had then, and we've come a long way and blah blah blah, because I really do think that the knowledge of D.D. Palmer, Nikola Tesla, Albert Einstein, these people had knowledge far beyond what we maybe think they did, and technology was far more advanced than we even know about back then. I'm just curious, was there anything that Alan read that scratched your record that said, oh, whoa, 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 Dee had a false understanding of spinal biomechanics back then? There was nothing he read. I mean, I don't like the term click or whatever, but it had nothing to do with what he was saying. But there was no indication that Dee's understanding of spinal biomechanics was less than ours, for heaven's sakes, was there?
I think he was probably the most learned man in spinal biomechanics and the nerve system of his time. He was ahead of his time. I don't know if the odontoid and the atlas make that click. It sounds pretty cool. I never thought about it, but but maybe we've proven that wrong. But ultimately, he was right on, and a lot of things I think they're really proving D.D. Palmer being more correct as the current science is catching up.
I would agree.
One of the other books I brought up today was this one. This is volume 20. And, this is, again, evidence-based, because I knew that was going to come up, you realize. And, pre and post x-rays of BJ Palmer. And, I'm sorry we don't have the internet back then, but, one adjustment, rest them, Atlas ASR, adjustment 1, and rested for 30 days, right? And having tremendous outcomes and change. We have evidence and science early, the beginning of chiropractic, before Didi delivered that first adjustment, 1895. He had already been one of the most learned men in spinal biomechanics by that point. And he introduced it. He said, I've studied this for 9 years before introducing it to Harvey Lillard. I want to mention another book too, and this one I want to honor the Crystals over here, and Robert Crystal over here, who had this reprinted. And this is The Science and Logic of Chiropractic by Werner. And he is also one of the authors of Rational Bacteriology. Bob had these reprinted, and I have this and I cherish it. And this is the next one. I really think we should reprint this one. And this is the Rational Bacteriology. And this one I had, Denise Evans gave me this one, and she signed it. But I got this from Pasquale. He said, science in this book will lead you to the ultimate in chiropractic, which is wisdom. Pasquale Sarasoli, 2004. And, what are we working towards is connecting to the wisdom. What's the wisdom that's created the universe? So chiropractic is leading us towards that. There might not be logic in those things, but that's spiritual consciousness. And Robert, I really appreciate you. Thank you. And chiropractic thanks you of bringing these books back and having these reprinted. Awesome. So I think we should move on. What do you guys think?
All right.
Okay, so we're now going into, wait, is this spinal pathogenesis? No.
That's the next chapter here.
Yeah, okay. You want to
wanna
start?
Go there? You want to read that? You want me to read that starting there?
Yeah, go ahead.
Spinal pathogenesis. We're on page, guys, that's 98.
And yep. We may skip a little bit through here, okay?
You tell me what you want me to leave out, but I'll start reading at the top. Pathogenesis, the generation of disease, the act or process of reproduction, the breeding and production of disease, the origin and genesis of suffering, the development of morbid conditions or of a diseased character. Medical men look upon disease as an entity, a something that has an individual living existence, its continuance depending upon the reproduction. Therefore, they fight disease, aim to stamp it out. If they could destroy, kill, get rid of every pathogenic germ, the last microbe disease breeder, there would be no such thing as disease. They consider a germ as a special virus, a kind of spore, which by rapid increase causes conditions known as disease, by which disease is communicated. They hold that certain diseases are dependent upon definite microorganisms. A germ disease is one caused by microorganisms. A microbe is a pathogenic microorganism. They believe that all germ diseases They believe all germ diseases are produced by microbes, that diseases originate from minute microscopic fungi, bacteria, which are developed without or within the body, that unhealthy tissue furnishes food, makes favorable conditions for their rapid multiplication within the animal economy, thereby cause specific diseases which become communicable.
Let's pause a second. This is where he doesn't, I don't know if he says it here, but I know I've read, I think it was the 1910, that, he was, like you were saying before, Barry too, we've all said it, that he was educating, a lot of medical doctors and those type of things, early in his career. And one thing he said, it's difficult or impossible to change a medical fighter into a chiropractic, what did he say? A chiropractor. And because we're just fighting disease, we've got to go and fight this thing. And in a way, in chiropractic, we went to the same way of fighting that subluxation. We just want to find that enemy and fight it. And Didi rarely, he doesn't talk about fighting that subluxation. He really talks about bringing tone, establishing proper tone in the system, but not fighting it. Oh, no, what did he call it? A chiropractor? I forget. I forgot the whole sentence. I had it, but we'll keep going.
Okay. Mental peculiarities, physical characteristics, and diseases may be congenital. Congenital is inclusive. It takes in all uterine conditions from conception to birth. Inborn refers to that which may be engrafted on the mental or body during development. In infective disease, one which is communicable may be congenital, not inborn, as are dispositions and constitutional peculiarities which are implanted during development. A physical defect, faulty metabolism is inborn. A developmental error acquired during the process of development of the first 4 months did not originate because of intrauterine disease or injury. Chiropractors look upon disease not as an entity, but a condition. I think that's an important line.
Yes, it is. Why do you think
chiropractors look upon disease not as an entity, but a condition in which there is a change in position, structure, and functions of organs, that microscopic fungi or bacteria are there because of favorable conditions. Just as rotting cheese and decaying bread favor the growth of mold, fungi range in size from the microscopic cells of the yeast plant to the higher organized body of a mushroom. Drug pathogenesis is the production of morbid symptoms by the use of drugs. A drug is any substance used to return abnormal functioning to abnormal function or abnormal tissue to normal. Any article used as a medicine or in the composition of medicines for external or internal use for the cure of disease. The history of medicine discloses that each method of treating its sick has been followed by another based on exactly opposite principles and philosophies which are diametrically opposed to each other. Allopathy, that system of remedial treatment which seeks to cure diseases by producing a condition incompatible with the disease. Opposed to homeopathy, quote, any poisons must, as Galen held, by the counter poisons be expelled, unquote. Galen was a Greek, if I'm not mistaken. Homeopathy, that system of medical treatment which seeks to cure disease by administering medicine which would produce the same disease in a healthy condition, opposed to allopathy, similibus curanter, like cures like. Spinal pathogenesis includes the origin and development of morbid conditions because of the pathological anatomy of the spine. In allopathy, disease is treated by exciting a morbid, diseased process of another kind in another part of the body as a method of substitution. Shall I keep going through this description of
well, no, let's move on. Let's take a skip, because the rest of this is sort of all of that of just disclosing the different types of processes. And I mean, I don't have anything actually marked in that whole chapter. Palpation of nerve and nerve tracing is the next one. Is the next chapter. Maybe we should pause there for the night and discuss a little bit,
All right.
because, you
I
know,
have some stuff in palpation and nerve tracing when we get to that, but yeah, we could stop here.
well, I think that's where
And
maybe
chat.
we'll pick it up next week there, because we did a
Yeah.
lot of reading and a lot of really good stuff. And you know, I wasn't picking on the students in Spain. They're so excited, and I love being with them today. And you know, this is really is a, you know, like I say, we're creating history, and so many people are listening to this, are literally around the world, Asia, you know, Mexico, South America, Europe, some in the US, we hope. But you know, there's a lot going on here. What did you guys get out of the reading so far today?
I like what
Go ahead.
Alan read the most in the beginning. In the beginning, the first statement.
Oh, that first thing. Okay.
Hey, Einstein.
Bob, go ahead.
Just things that we've all probably said ourselves and heard, and some of them heard it being spoken of years before we came along. You don't fight the darkness, you turn on the light. You don't fight the sickness, you turn on the life. And then some of the old time chiropractors would tell stories about their first experience going to a chiropractor, and the chiropractor saying to them, I can't do anything about what's wrong with you, but I can do a lot about what's right within you.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on. No fighting.
Oh, now I remember the rest. Go ahead, Barry.
I was going to say, I loved what Alan read tonight too. This part about a drug is any substance used to restore abnormal functionation or abnormal tissue to normal. This is really important in today's time in chiropractic, because Florida and there's many other states that are looking into dry needling and drugs that are topical. And the ones that are for it are looking at it like it's not a medical drug, but it's outside in treatment. And this is really important here on page 98 to listen and read what Dee Dee is saying. You know, the definition of what a drug is, and if there's any use in our profession whatsoever, which I completely disagree that it needs to be in our profession. But it really comes up to current times, because everybody, well, not everybody, there are groups and state associations that are wanting to expand our scope, including everything that's taught in the schools, which we know that vary from school to school. So those are my initial thoughts there on these last 2 pages that really hit me with what's in our current pipeline for our profession in the next 5 to 10 years, because it's already in front of the state boards now.
Oh, it has been for years. It's got a lot more backing now too. There is a bigger push, which, you know, that all boils down to money. There's a lot more money on that side. And you have companies like, I'm not going to advertise them, but, you know, the biggest universities building, you know, taking out most of the parking lot that build an amphitheater, you know, and, you know, the schools being sponsored by corporations. I mean, I do not see anything good with that at all. It's ridiculous. But it's all about finances and paying their debt so they can pay each other more, I guess. But you know, that's you know, from shoe inserts to, you know, hair growing treatment, none of it worked on me. And it all went to Alan's beard. And you know, none of that's chiropractic, you know, but it's, you know, what do we do with this? How do we preserve that sacred trust? It's within us. But what do we do? 10 years, honestly, with the push, do you think chiropractors are going to be doing something that we're really not trained to do? And then they're going to be training them to do those things, from phlebotomy and everything else, which we do take those classes, right? You know, what does the landscape look like? It's easy to imagine. What is that? No mixing.
Mixers.
Yeah. You know, there's a time and a place for medication. I'm honest with you. My wife didn't have surgery to remove a cyst, we wouldn't have my children. We did everything until the last resort. Okay, let's go interview doctors, not for exams. We know what we need to do, until we found the right person that we matched our tone, and this is the outcome. There's a time and the place. We've gotten a little bit crazy.
The
Pardon me,
challenges in our profession, we've got all kinds of people using all kinds of things. They're treating the symptoms. They're talking about, infrared, and they're doing heat, and they're doing cold, and they're doing, even you talk about nutrition. What happens, vitamin A is toxic if you have too much. So if you give somebody a lot of vitamin A and then you adjust them and their body knows what to do, then what happens? Do they have too much? Are they taking too much? Does it cause another problem? We've lost track of our purpose in so many in our profession have lost track of the core, and have gone towards the symptomatic relief for patients, because they think that's what they want, and they haven't told them there's something else available.
They're adding to their vices. I remember my quote before: it's impossible to turn the medical fighter into the peaceful chiropractor. That's what it was. And you think about in chiropractic, that's what we've been taught, is to fight that subluxation, though. We're creating those medical fighters instead of, creating peaceful chiropractors. It's harder to sell that. It's easier to sell fear. It's easier to sell, this is your enemy, go defeat it, right? But, when we're really talking about tension off the frame and bringing peace to the system so it can function at its best, it's pretty much what my vocabulary is in the office, is really about peace. It's not about we're going to conquer this thing together, but it's really, let's talk about peace. Your system's not at peace right now. Let's bring it to peace. We adjust the vertebra, we bring ease into the system. I do talk about subluxation, don't get me wrong, a lot. But there's a different consciousness of making it your enemy. And Bob will remember this, and Pasquale talking about, I remember this changed my life, actually, when sub means under, right? Under, and it's very popular, under the expression of the light, subluxation. But Pasquale said, this is all he said. He said, remember, sub also means, he says, what less than, sub means less than, but also means under the expression of the light, right? That subluxation is under the light, from above down and the inside out. That's the clue. For me, that's the voice of innate. Help me here. This is out of place. This is how I know how to talk to you. Please care for me in this way. You know how to read my language. It might be different from Scott than it is from Alan, from Barry than it is from Bob. And I trust you this way. I trust you over here. So that voice of innate, to me, is that subluxation calling for help.
If I had to do it again, I wouldn't have stressed in my office. And I even had a chart by my X-ray reading table about subluxation degeneration. I really stressed that. Stage 1, 2, 3, 4. You're in stage 3. We got to stop this degenerative process. Rather than speaking about the regenerative quality of you.
I like that. The regenerative quality of you. Go ahead, Bob. I'm writing it down.
You're muted, Bob.
No, I was just giving a thumbs up for that statement.
I like that regenerative quality of you.
That when I started school at Sherman, and when we were adjusted there, we had resting rooms, and you had people go lie down for 15 or 20 minutes after they got adjusted. And I don't think I've understood at that time, and I don't know if it was being taught even at that time, that part of what happens when we're adjusting people is we're restoring a balance, where people come in under stress and they're on a sympathetic overload, and we're allowing a parasympathetic response to be restored to the body and allowing that balance. And when you think about it, when you lie down and rest, you're going into a parasympathetic state. So you adjust people and let them rest for 15 minutes, and it magnifies the adjustment. And I don't hear anybody talking about resting anybody anymore.
I know
I
if you
do.
do.
because you don't,
You
most
rest
people don't
people?
have room in their office to
Oh,
allow
every
that to
day.
happen. I understand. Barry, I'm proud of you. But that
Yeah,
is
every
old
day, every
school that
person.
has disappeared. And now I understand there's a more bigger value than they were even explaining to us
Yeah.
in that process.
My parking lot was too small to have them resting.
This was a
No.
month.
No,
put
that's
them
in your headspace, Steve.
BJ rested him for a month. Okay, one adjustment and for a month. I mean, they paid $500 to be there, but yeah, I've always wanted to add that into my room. My rest is, take your time coming up. Pay the lady on the way out. I'm kidding. Yeah.
You're right. It was in my head, Barry.
You're right.
I have a very, very small parking lot, so I would challenge you with that. But no, the resting is Alan, wow, I'm impressed that your school had post resting. I would be shocked today if there's any schools that do rest after adjustments. And of all of them, I would really think Sherman should have one because they do have some upper cervical courses there. Hopefully they have them. But no, I adjusted, well, everybody rests, but I adjusted a family on Saturday. And the grandson had asked the grandfather, he's like, Dr. Hobbs just said that BJ rested the patients afterwards. He's like, well, yeah, he put him on a rollable cot and rolled him down the hallway to a room for 2 hours. And he said, he just asked me to do 20 minutes. So yeah, we rest literally every person. It's the most important part post adjustment, besides paying the lady out the door.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. It's something that I really I have not done. A mandatory rest in my practice, and honestly, I don't do it myself after getting adjusted, and it's part of the fast track. Pasquale I keep mentioning Pasquale today, but he talked about getting off that fast track, and just like Alan said, of just bringing them down to peace. And I mean, I applaud everybody in your techniques and all that you do. The resting with any technique, I see the value in it. Absolutely.
Well, here's another thing is after an adjustment, the mind, if we can speak philosophy and and be living the ease ourselves, it's like I used to sit and meditate for 2 hours a day. Now what I'm doing is I meditate with my eyes open and I do walking meditation. I do mindfulness. And so it's possible that they don't need it's possible that when the mind is at rest through trust and faith in this power, you don't necessarily have to rest physically after the adjustment. I'm just playing devil's advocate because of the power of a rested mind.
Change the
I
world.
often go to if I see my chiropractor mostly on Thursdays, and I usually go over to Rock Creek Park and walk in the woods afterwards for take a hike in the and by the creek, and
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I was going to mention Scott, and he just blinked off. I'm going to Colorado in a couple of weeks to Breckenridge, and it's going to be right by Scott Little, who was just on. And so in March, we're going to do a Tuesday. I'll do it together with him from Colorado. I was just gonna give him a shout out. But I really appreciate you guys. We're almost at the finish line here, man. We are literally almost done. Alan, have you reviewed anybody reviewed the last couple of pages?
I have, but not recently. I've got a lot of stuff actually marked in the spinal pathogenesis and in palpation. I got a bunch of stuff marked.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we're getting into intuitive senses and
Bones and nerves.
intelligence.
Yeah, bones and nerves, I got a lot.
Yeah.
Not so much in pyorrhea.
We could skip that one. Yeah, pyorrhea, alvarosis. We're really right there at that end, and that's the last chapter. So we have we basically have two more chapters, and we're gonna be done. Okay. And
I'll
then
look at spinal Oh no, spinal pathogenesis we just did. Palpation and nerve tracing. Yeah, there's a bunch in there.
Yeah, there's a bunch in palpation and nerve tracing, and then there's a little bit in that next one after that.
Yeah,
But
bones and nerves. Yeah,
bones and
that should
nerve.
do it. Those two.
And oh, there's Scott. There's Scott. So I think next week we're pretty much going to finish this up. Hey, Scott, I was just going to mention to you that we're going to do, we'll do that Tuesday night when I'm in Colorado. We could do it together if you want.
Oh, that'd be
And
great.
I think that'd be a lot of fun. All right.
Absolutely. I'm sorry I had to step out for a second, but I appreciate that.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, guys, ladies, and gentlemen, and I see your cat is probably the most spoiled cat ever there, Carol. All right. You guys have a beautiful night. Bless you all. And I love and appreciate you. Good night, everybody.
Thank you all.